Story 1. The Woman in the Ditch Who Never Stopped Watching. This happened to me in 2017. I was doing an overnight run from Tulsa to Santa Fe, a haul I'd done before, though not often, not at night. It was October, and a cold front had moved in heavy that week. The highway was slick with rainfall, and the sound of the wipers never quite matched the rhythm of the road. Somewhere between the Texas Panhandle and eastern New Mexico, the fog started to thicken. You learn to track distance differently when you've been driving for a while. It's not just time or mileage, it's how many songs have passed, how many sips of coffee, how many billboards with peeling paint. That night, I hadn't passed much of anything. Just cattle fencing, muddy shoulders, and the kind of blackness you forget exists until you're inside it. I first saw her around 3:20 a.m. She was standing in a ditch on the passenger side of the road, maybe 20 feet down the embankment. I only noticed because her dress was light-colored, almost white. It reflected the truck's high beams for just a moment. She was facing the road, but the part that stuck with me was that she wasn't moving. Not even a little. No flinch, no blink. Her arms hung stiff at her sides, and she was angled slightly upward, like she was waiting for someone in particular to pass. I looked back in my side mirror, but the fog swallowed everything up. Now, it's not unheard of to see people walking rural highways. Sometimes folks break down and head for help. Sometimes you get people out there for reasons that don't make sense. But she didn't move an inch. She wasn't wet, despite the rain. She was just there, like a road sign that didn't belong. I shook it off, told myself maybe she was real, maybe she wasn't. I was tired, but exactly an hour later at 4:20, I saw her again. Same spot, same distance from the road, same angle of her head. This time I caught a longer glimpse. She wasn't just still, she was identically still. Everything from her hair position to the way her feet angled into the slope. Exact, like someone had copied and pasted the image into the landscape. That's when the dissonance crept in. My brain couldn't register it as real, not fully. It felt like déjà vu, but not from a dream, from a rerun. I rubbed my eyes. I pulled off and checked my brakes, told myself maybe I was looping through the same stretch somehow, like those old stories of glitch roads. But my GPS showed a clear path. No turns, no doubling back. At 5:20, just before the sun began to dilute the sky, I saw her a third time. The fog was denser now, curling around the reflectors and diffusing the headlights like gauze. But she was visible, just barely. Right there in the same ditch, her dress unbothered by wind or water, her eyes locked on the cab. I slowed down without thinking. It wasn't out of fear, not exactly. It was more like protocol, like when something doesn't belong and you instinctively adjust to acknowledge it. My truck idled, my wipers thumped a slow, tired rhythm. The road steamed. Still, she didn't move. I didn't stop. But for the rest of the drive, every curve, every flicker of lightning in the distance, I found myself scanning the shoulders, waiting to see her again. I didn't. When I finally reached a rest stop with signal, I called in. It was around 6:15, and my dispatcher, a guy named Rick I'd never actually met in person, picked up on the third ring. I didn't open with it. I talked about the weather, the visibility, the fact that the roads were slick and I'd be pushing my ETA back by maybe half an hour. Then I asked if there were any incidents reported along 54. Breakdowns, search parties, missing persons. He didn't answer right away. I heard him take a breath, long and slow. Then he said, "Was it a woman? In the ditch?" I felt something tighten in my chest. "Yeah," I said. "How'd you know?" Rick didn't sound alarmed. That's what struck me. He just sounded tired. "We've heard about her," he said. "You're not the first." I waited for a laugh, some kind of offhand joke, but it didn't come. I asked him what he meant. "Calls come in now and then. Always drivers, always at night. Same stretch of road. The rain's usually heavy. They see a woman standing real still by the side." I swallowed hard. "Is it like some local legend or something?" "I don't know what it is," he said. "I've never seen her. But a couple old-timers say she's been showing up for years. I asked if anyone had ever stopped. One guy did, back in 2009. Said he pulled over and walked down the ditch, but she wasn't there when he got close. Just empty grass and a weird smell, like burnt rubber and lilacs. He let that hang in the air a second, then he added, almost like an afterthought, "Some figures don't travel. They appear where you're most likely to see them." I didn't say anything for a while. Later that morning, when I reached Santa Fe and dropped the load, I parked and just sat for a bit. My cab smelled like damp leather and hot plastic. I kept thinking about the way Rick had said it. Not alarmed, not curious, just like something that had been filed away, not explained, not solved, just known. I've talked to other drivers since then, quietly, always off the record. You learn which ones are open to those kinds of conversations, not the guys with big opinions or loud laughs, but the quiet ones, the ones who nod a lot, who remember every detail. Turns out, sightings like the woman I saw aren't as rare as I thought. A guy named Elias swore he saw someone matching her exact description off Route 287 near Amarillo. Another woman I met at a truck stop in Wichita Falls said she once saw her along I-40, only she was facing away, like she'd already been passed by too many trucks and didn't care to turn anymore. There's a pattern. Most of the sightings are during rain. Most happen just before dawn, and almost all of them happen along old freight or migration routes, roads that used to carry more than just commerce. There's history baked into them, displacement, violence. The kind people don't always talk about. Some folklorists call them trauma anchors, entities that linger not because they want to be seen, but because they were never noticed the first time. She never signaled, never moved, never asked for help. She just stood there, eyes fixed, like she was still waiting for something to return. 3 nights later, I was driving through Oklahoma, a short haul between Woodward and Elk City. The rain had stopped that morning, but the roads were still lined with runoff and red clay. When I parked that night to refuel and check my lights, I noticed something caught in the front grille of my truck. A scarf. It was pale blue, soft and gauzy, and it smelled faintly of rain and old perfume. At first I thought it was debris from the road, but when I touched it, I swear to God, it was warm. Not sun-warmed, not engine-warmed, just warm, like it had been worn. I never reported it. What would I say? I keep the scarf in my glove box now. I don't know why. Maybe to prove to myself that it really happened. Maybe because some part of me thinks she's still out there, watching for someone who'll finally stop and see her. I haven't seen her since, but I don't drive that stretch at night anymore. Story 2. I woke up 143 miles off route, and the truck was still moving. This happened to me in the fall of 2019. I was on a haul from Flagstaff, Arizona to Boise, Idaho. It was one of those late-season crossovers where the nights feel colder than they should, and every gas station coffee tastes like cardboard. I'd been driving professionally for about 10 years at that point, never had a record, never had a violation. If anything, I was known for being meticulous, checklists, logs, inspections. The kind of guy you could wake up at 3 a.m. and I'd still have my odometer readings memorized. That's why this has stayed with me the way it has. Because I know I didn't fall asleep, but I still woke up. The route from Flagstaff to Boise is straightforward, mostly I-15 and a few connectors. That night, I remember getting through Vegas just before midnight. The roads were quiet, the kind of quiet you only get between long-haul corridors, where even the sky feels like it's holding its breath. At some point, after crossing into Utah, I remember thinking I'd pull off soon to eat something. That's the last clear thing I can recall. Next thing I knew, I was upright in the driver's seat, hands on the wheel, road humming under the tires. But it was morning. Sunlight had just started to come up behind the mountains, low and red. My body felt wrong, like I'd been submerged in warm syrup and yanked out too fast. Not tired, not refreshed, just interrupted. I blinked, looked around. I was still driving. The GPS voice came on without warning, recalculating route. But that's when I noticed the road signs. I was on US 93, somewhere north of Pioche, Nevada, which didn't make sense at all. I was 143 miles off course. I pulled over, set the brake, and sat there in the cab with my heart pounding. My logs showed I'd never stopped. The dash cam had 4 hours of blank recording, no alerts, no motion data, just a flat timestamp. Midnight to 4:08 a.m., gone. The odometer showed mileage I didn't remember driving. I checked the logs again. No missed exits. No rerouting. The engine temperature was stable. Fuel usage matched the distance. My last saved GPS point was about 10 miles past Mesquite. Then silence, until the present. I hadn't blacked out before. Not once in 10 years. No medical history, no substances, nothing. I tried calling dispatch, but the signal was weak. I checked my phone's recent calls. Nothing, no alarms, no audio recordings, just a perfectly normal log, except for the 4-hour gap. That's the part that still bothers me most. I didn't wake up scared, not right away. I woke up thinking I'd just spaced out, zoned out. But the more I tried to reconstruct the timeline, the more the hole inside that window stretched. It wasn't just what I forgot. It was the feeling that something had been preserved during that time, something that knew I wouldn't remember. I pulled off to a rest area outside Ely, Nevada. Small lot. 2 other trucks, both empty, engines off. The morning air was cold enough that the condensation on the windows hadn't burned off yet. I needed to check the sleeper. Something felt wrong in the cab, off balance. Like walking into a room where someone just stepped out, even though the doors are locked. The curtain behind me was pulled halfway shut. I'd left it open earlier in the night. I was sure of that. I never sleep with the curtain closed while driving solo. Too easy to lose peripheral vision. When I reached back to pull it open, my fingers froze. There was a handprint, not fresh, not clean, smudged and wide, streaked with something grayish-brown like dust or grease. But the key detail wasn't the grime. It was the orientation. The handprint wasn't on the outside of the curtain. It was pressed from the inside, fabric bent slightly forward, as if someone had held it there. The size of it was wrong too. I wear gloves, large. This was bigger. Not dramatically, but enough. Enough that it didn't match my own. The fingers were longer, palm flatter. I stood there a minute watching the print. Then I slowly pulled the curtain back. The sleeper was empty, at least visibly. No bags moved, no bedding shifted. But there was a smell. Not foul, just present. Like skin and sweat and something old. Like a motel blanket no one had washed properly. I opened every compartment, checked the cubbies, storage units, floor panels. Nothing. I stepped back outside and walked around the trailer. No footprints, no damage, no signs of tampering. But when I got back in the cab, the smell was stronger. I ran a scan of the cabin interior, one of those air quality sensors some drivers use to monitor carbon levels. The reading came back normal, but the scan picked up a sudden dip in humidity around the sleeping berth, like something exhaled and then stopped. I sat down in the driver's seat and stared at the curtain for a long time. The handprint didn't fade. Later that night, when I parked at a truck stop outside Twin Falls, I tried to wipe it off. It wouldn't come out. Not completely. I had the curtain cleaned, replaced it eventually, but I still remember the exact shape, the way the smudge trailed down the fabric, like whoever or whatever had pressed. It wasn't trying to hide. It was trying to be known. I started asking around, quietly, online mostly. Forums where drivers talked under aliases, where they shared stories without fear of ridicule. There were terms for what I'd experienced, or close to it. Split-state driving, midline loop, unauthorized occupation. The last one stuck with me. It referred to cases, rare ones, where drivers reported signs of unknown individuals having boarded their trucks mid-route, without forced entry, without detection. Some of the reports were sensationalized, but others Others had details that matched my own: waking up in motion, curtain disturbances, smells, forgotten stretches of time with mechanical consistency, and no memory of the route. One guy claimed he once found boot prints on the ceiling of his sleeper cab. Another swore he heard breathing behind the curtain, but only when the cab was moving. But the most unsettling account I came across came from a driver out of Pennsylvania. He'd picked up a load in Harrisburg, dropped it in Memphis, and had no issues the whole way down. But when he cleaned his cab 2 weeks later, he found something wedged beneath his mattress pad. A note, written in shaky, childish block letters. "You drive well." I wish I could say I didn't find anything like that, but I did. About a month after the Nevada incident, I was parked at a distribution center in Oregon. Standard drop, uneventful. That night, while adjusting my bedding, I found something wedged behind the rear panel of the sleeper. Not a note. A sock. It wasn't mine. Wrong size, wrong style. Dark green with 2 faded orange stripes. It smelled like dirt and soap, like it had been used, but recently. I threw it out, told myself it belonged to the last guy who had used the truck before it was assigned to me, even though I knew that wasn't true. I'd had that truck for 3 years. No one else had driven it since the transfer. Sometimes at night, I still catch myself glancing in the rear view, not at the road but at the curtain. The new one, dark blue now. It always stays open. I haven't lost time again, but I've started noticing something new. When I sleep, I dream about roads I've never driven, desert highways with no shoulders, tunnels that go too far down, checkpoints with no guards, and always, the soft click of a sleeper curtain being drawn. From the inside, Story 3, the truck stop that only exists when it's raining. This happened over the span of 3 years. I haul freight across the central states, Missouri, Kansas, Oklahoma mostly. That part of the country has stretches where the highways feel like they were built to be forgotten. Long, flat corridors where the sky turns to slate when the weather moves in. It was late March the first time I found the place. I was somewhere south of Topeka, cutting west on a detour after a jackknifed rig had blocked the interstate. Heavy rainfall had started a couple hours before, and the water pooled fast on those rural backroads. Not quite flash flood conditions, but close. I was down to about 40 miles an hour, wipers on full blast. I was almost out of coffee and the rain was grinding at me. Then, just after a long bend in the highway, I saw lights. An old-style truck stop, neon glowing blue and yellow through the downpour. The sign didn't have a name, just a generic fuel and food in that blocky 80s font, the kind you'd expect to see half dead on Route 66. I pulled in mostly to get warm. The parking lot was larger than I expected, almost too clean, like it had been pressure washed recently. I remember thinking it looked new, but also old, as if someone rebuilt it exactly as it had been 30 years ago. I killed the engine and stepped out into the rain. The inside smelled like coffee and vinyl and lemon-scented floor cleaner. Not bad, just sterile. Manufactured comfort, like a model truck stop built for a photo shoot. There were people inside, 5 or 6, all truckers, I assumed. They sat spaced out eating or staring down into coffee mugs. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved much either. One guy had a plate of fries in front of him that he never touched. The cashier looked up as I came in. Older guy, pale, no beard, no name tag. He nodded once. The diner section was roped off, so I grabbed a coffee from the machine. It was already hot, as if someone had just brewed it. I sat down in a booth near the window, still dripping rainwater, and noticed something strange. The seat was already warm, like someone had just stood up. Everything was perfectly placed. Napkin holder full, salt shaker exactly half full. No signs of wear on the table, but also no signs of use. Just that same off-feeling cleanliness, like a set that resets itself between scenes. I drank the coffee and didn't say a word. No one did. The rain outside was loud, but steady, predictable, and for those 20 minutes, I felt calm, almost too calm. The cashier never broke eye contact, not in a hostile way, more like he was watching a performance he'd already seen and waiting to see if I'd change it. I left shortly after, filled up at one of the pumps, and drove out. My log showed the time. My fuel gauge reflected the fill. Everything about the stop was functionally real, except I couldn't find it again. When I checked the GPS history, the location didn't match. It showed me still on the highway, no deviation, no turn-in, like I'd never pulled off. I thought maybe the system had glitched, but it happened again and again. Always during rain, always the same stop. Same lights, same people, same warm seat. The second time I found it, I kept the receipt. It was late June, just before dawn. I'd been hauling steel beams out of Wichita, trying to make up time after a flat tire delay. A storm had rolled in around 2 a.m., just heavy enough to slow me down. That's when the lights showed up again. Same bend in the road, same sign, same emptiness, except for the glowing windows and the too clean parking lot. I didn't hesitate this time. Pulled in, parked, walked through the same automatic door. The same faint bell chimed above. Inside, nothing had changed. Same layout, same people, same exact man behind the counter. And when I say same, I don't mean similar, I mean identical. The man hadn't aged. His hands were folded the same way on the counter. The same trucker with the fries sat unmoving in the same booth. It was like stepping into a paused memory. I walked straight to the coffee dispenser. The cup was already placed on the machine. I hesitated, then poured it anyway. As I paid, I asked the man behind the counter, "What's this place called?" He looked at me for a long moment. Then he printed the receipt and handed it over. "Safe travels," he said. That was all. The receipt was warm, faintly damp, like the paper had just come out of a humid printer. I glanced down. The total was $6.66. I didn't notice until I was back in my cab, idling in the rain, that there was no store name, no address, no transaction ID, just the time, the word coffee, and the amount. I folded the receipt and put it in the glove box. The next morning, I reached for it, planning to take a picture. It was blank, not faded, not washed out, just white, completely blank thermal paper, like it had never been printed on at all. The total stayed the same each time. I kept 3 more receipts over the next year. Each time I made sure to preserve them. One in a plastic bag, one in a hardcover book, one taped flat to my dashboard. They all faded to white by morning, not yellowed, not aged, erased. And yet my card transactions always showed the charge. $6.66, no merchant name, no terminal ID, just a timestamp and a location tag that came up as unavailable. I started researching. There's a fringe theory among certain geography heads and atmospheric scientists about what they call storm access phenomena. Isolated events where environmental conditions temporarily expose or enable access to physical locations that don't register in ordinary space. Some of the more extreme cases talk about weather-tied architecture, buildings that only manifest under specific atmospheric pressure. Some even suggest these structures aren't built at all, but remembered into being. But none of that accounted for what happened with the gas. One night near Amarillo, I was nearly empty. The rain hit hard, torrential. Then, as if on cue, the same glow appeared off the shoulder. I didn't even question it this time. I pulled in, topped off the tank, grabbed coffee, nodded once at the man behind the counter. No one else spoke. This time, the man mouthed something as I left. No sound came out, but his lips formed words, slowly, deliberately. I didn't understand at first. Later, in the cab, I replayed it in my head until I heard it as clearly as if he'd whispered it in my ear. "Next time, don't come alone." That stuck with me. I don't know why. I hadn't told anyone about the place. I'd always stopped solo. But I started to wonder, what would have happened if someone else had been in the cab? Would they have seen it? Would they have remembered? And the most pressing question, why would coming alone matter? I went back through every logbook I had, every location ping. The stop never registered, but the fuel did. Full tank, proper grade, same mileage output, same burn rate. It powered my rig, got me to my next drop. So I ask again, where did I really stop? I've tried to bring others since then. Once I had a new guy riding shotgun on a training run. The rain came, and I took the same route, same time, same conditions. No lights, no turnoff. He just stared at me like I was crazy when I slowed down for a patch of darkness where a building should have been. Another time, I came back alone, this time in heavy snow, no rain, nothing appeared. It only happens in rain, and only when I'm by myself. I've accepted the pattern now. I've made 7 stops in total, each identical, each impossible. The last time, the man behind the counter mouthed something different. Almost done. That's all. I haven't seen the stop since. The rain's come. The routes have aligned, but no lights, no warm booth, no receipt, only silence where a structure used to be, or maybe never was. I still wonder sometimes, when the wipers drag across the glass and the roads disappear beneath pooling water, what's waiting at the stop the next time I find it? And who'll be sitting in my booth if I bring someone with me?